Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the primary election debate in Legislative District 18. I'm Ben Giles. I'm a reporter for the Arizona Capitol Times, and I'll be your moderator tonight. A little bit about the Capitol Times. We're a great source of political news coverage in the state of Arizona. We closely watch the governor, state agencies, and most of all, the legislative process, including elections like this one. I've been covering the legislature for 6 years, so for our candidates tonight, if you're successful and make it through to the general and into the legislature, you'll see a lot more of me next year. Before we begin, just going to go over a couple of things one more time. We do request for our audience to please silence all your cell phones and electronic devices, and please refrain from any interruptions, including clapping. This debate is airing live on PBS and being live streamed on Facebook. It's also being recorded for those who'd like to watch later and for post-captioning services, so please no interruptions. And now a bit about the host of tonight's debate, the Citizens Clean Election Commission. The Clean Elections Act is a campaign finance reform and voter education measure. It was initiated by Arizona citizens and passed by voters in 1998. As part of its role, Clean Elections provides clean funding for qualified, participating candidates who agree to abide by the Clean Elections Act and its rules. These rules include contribution and spending limits on their campaigns, foregoing special interest money, and participating in debates like this one. This debate is for you, the audience, to ask questions tonight. So I see a lot of you have already utilized the note cards. If you haven't got one yet, just please raise your hand. We've got staff around who will get you a note card. You can write questions down on those. They'll bring them up to me, and I'll be able to ask them of our candidates tonight. We've scheduled at least an hour and a half for this debate. During the first portion, I'll be asking questions of all 7 candidates. You'll take turns as far as who gets to answer first. We'll just start alphabetically and move down the line. And everyone will get a chance to answer the same question, a minute per candidate. If the first person to answer the question has a rebuttal or something they want to tack on at the end, we'll give 30 seconds for that as well. In the second half of the debate, this is an opportunity for you to ask questions of specific candidates. So if you want to ask a question of Mitzi Epstein, just please write her name on the card. They'll bring the card to me, and then I'll know who to direct the question to. I will say you'll get 2 minutes for those answers, and if there's anyone else on the panel who wants to address a question that's asked of someone else, just raise your hand and get my attention, and we'll give you 30 seconds to chip in. So again, if you have a question for a specific candidate, please write that on the card. At the end, we'll have a minute for closing remarks from each candidate. A quick note, we do screen these questions that you're writing for clarity, just to ensure we're not asking the same thing twice. We're also looking for questions, not speeches. So we also don't allow questions that are simply a personal attack on a candidate. Once more, please remain polite to all the candidates. Please give them a fair and uninterrupted debate, no matter how strongly you may agree or disagree with what they're saying. We're going to get started with opening statements. You'll each have 1 minute. And we'll start with Mitzi.
Well, good evening, and thank you to Clean Elections for holding these debates and everything you do to help keep our elections trustworthy, and to you, Ben Giles. I'm asking for your vote because I get results for you. I'm committed to working with you, my neighbors, to solve problems and to open opportunities in education, jobs, and neighborhoods. I have a track record of transparency, working to earn the trust of my neighbors. As state representative, Kyrene school board member, soccer coach, arts council, PTO, PTA, and one of my favorites, Cub Scout leader. My work resume shows that I get results too. In my work as a computer systems analyst, I've developed efficiencies for major corporations like Citicorp and Olin Brass. I've brought those professional business skills to the legislature. As your state representative, I listen to you and I take action. That's why I fight for local control, because your neighborhood should be about your rules. And I've been a consistent voice to fully fund public education. I'm Mitzi Epstein. Let's fully restore education funding.
All right, Don.
Yes, my name's Don Walker, and I live in Tempe. which our family came here in about 1960, and I'm a graduate of Tempe High School, and have a BS in math, and I'm a retired computer programmer. So I'm also a Republican precinct committeeman, and I've been involved in local political action and races for about 14 years. And I've come up with a number of opinions about various things that I'd like to hopefully get through tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the Clean Elections Commission for hosting this event tonight, and thank you to all of you for coming out and sharing your evening with us. I'm Jennifer Germain. I'm running for Legislative District 18 House of Representatives because I want to represent you at our state capitol. LD 18 has been my home for 7.5 years. I have a bachelor's in international business and a master's in public administration. And I have worked for the last 15 years in the nonprofit sector, focusing in policy and advocacy in healthcare, elder care, and public education. And I currently consult with several nonprofits in the Arizona area. I'm running for this office because this office makes the decisions that I care about most in our local community. This office decides the funding that goes to our public schools. This office decides if we're going to continue to fund kids' care and access. And this office decides if and when Arizona will ever ratify the Equal Rights Amendment and give women full, equal constitutional rights. Thank you. My name is Jennifer Germain, and I'm running for Legislative District 18.
All right. Thank you. Jill?
Good evening. I'm Jill Norgard. It's been an honor and a privilege to represent District 18 over the last 4 years. Professionally, I'm an engineer. I've worked in the aerospace and defense industry for over 30 years. I have a bachelor's in engineering and a master's in business administration. At the Capitol over the last 4 years, the committees that I served on have been appropriations, commerce, education, and ethics. A few of the bills that I've passed have been to simplify education finance, eliminate redundant corporate commission fees, and dyslexia handbook that was developed that we finished last year, which actually this year we launched the first dyslexia preschool program, the first of its kind, not only in Arizona, but in the United States. And so I hope to earn the opportunity to continue to represent District 18 back at the Capitol.
Okay, thank you. And Greg?
Good evening. I'm Greg Patterson. We have a very high quality field here, and I get a minute to tell you what distinguishes me, and I think what that is experience. I served in the Arizona House of Representatives from 1991 to 1995. I chaired the House Government Operations Committee. I chaired the Banking and Insurance Committee. I'm a lawyer and a CPA. After I was in the legislature, I served as the director of the Residential Utility Consumer Office, which is a state agency that advocates on behalf of residential ratepayers in front of the Corporation Commission and takes on big utilities such as Arizona Public Service, Tucson Electric Power, Southwest Gas, et cetera. After that, I was chief of staff of the state Senate. And then in 2008, I was elected to the board of the county hospital. That's a 5-member governing board that deals with a variety of healthcare issues. And after that, I served 5 years on the Board of Regents. So when it comes to healthcare, education, taxation, energy issues, regulatory issues, I have a lot of high-level experience over the last 30 years, and I'd like to put that to work for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Farhana?
Thank you, Ben. Good evening, everyone, and my lovely family and Clean Election, and also all the audience for coming tonight. I'm Farhana Shifa. I'm running for Legislative District 18 House Representative. I born in Bangladesh, came here legally, and became a U.S. citizen. Those who lived in different countries and exposed to the different political, economical, and social environment, they can appreciate what America is. I'm living the American dream. That is why I'm committed to restore the American dream for all of you. I'm a teacher and a business owner, and I have corporate experience, management experience also in Bangladesh. I was national consultant, worked on education policy, child rights, and women's rights. So I want to bring those expertise and knowledge and comparison to better our own state. And as a conservative candidate, I will champion our Constitution, also protect our families and taxpayers, also focus on the jobs, schools, and our safe neighborhood. Hope to earn your vote. Farhana Shifa.
Thank you. And LaDawn.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening. I'm LaDawn Steuben. I am a fifth-generation Arizonan. My great-great-grandpa was a rancher up in Taylor. I am the oldest of 6 children raised in the East Valley, so you can guess what kind of family I come from here in Arizona. I am the mother of 2. My daughter is here now. She's going to be a senior at Corona del Sol next year. My son graduated from Corona and is now serving in the U.S. Navy as a linguist. Professionally, I am the executive pastry chef at Liberty Market in Gilbert. I am also a small business owner and a community advocate. So I am running to represent working families in our district. As a working mom for the last 20 years in LD 18, I have not felt very represented. So I'm running to change that. Thank you.
All right. And as I mentioned, we'll be asking questions from the audience. Everyone will get a chance to answer. Since Mitzi had the first opening comment, we'll start with you, Don. Don, what is your position on increasing public school funding, perhaps to bring it back to its pre-recession era levels?
Well, it's a very complex question because I follow the Tempe Union High School Board very closely. I was involved in the battle against Common Core. I spoke at both the House and Senate Education Committees. And I like to see everybody treated fairly, but I think that I have many grievances with the public education system. The Common Core came in. Of course, not one teacher. One teacher actually came in and fought against it. One math teacher in this whole state fought against Common Core, the most disgraceful system ever to come from the federal government. And there's been some pretty bad ones. I fought against the sex education program in the Tempe Union High School Board. The trying to get Planned Parenthood style sex education. My time is up. Thank you.
Jennifer, again, the question was, what is your position on increasing public school funding, possibly to bring it back to the pre-recession era levels?
As a mother, our public schools are my #1 priority. My child is about to go into the Kyrene School District, and she deserves to have the same opportunities as the children who came before her. And right now, she does not. We have a moral obligation to fund our public schools. These children are going to be our workforce in 10 to 15 years. If we do not produce the workers for our workforce, companies will stop coming to Arizona, and existing companies will start leaving Arizona. It is time that we step up and create a long-term, sustainable investment in our public school systems.
Jill?
As part of the Appropriations Committee, I structured and supported the 20% 20-by-20 teacher pay increase. The other means of revenue opportunities that we have in the state are school consolidation. Arizona has over 220 school districts. If you compare that to Nevada, that has 17, I think there's a great opportunity to look at consolidation of schools. 40% of the school superintendents that we have manage 2 or fewer schools. 60% of superintendents manage 5 or fewer schools. I think that's a great opportunity for revenue. Also, with the Wayfair versus South Dakota recent decision, that's going to bring a lot more revenue into the state. So those are 2 opportunities where we would have additional revenue to bring back the funding for education.
Greg?
I support increasing the funding as well. When I was in the legislature the first time, I had 4 years on the Appropriations Committee, and the theory was that as state income rose, that the money for education would rise because 2/3 of the budget at the time was for education. At the moment, healthcare has consumed so much of the budget that despite the fact that we've had a lot of increases in the base for the state budget, the shift away from education has been substantial. And so I support moves that would shift more money towards education. I do believe that the public schools are underfunded, and I also, of course, believe that the universities are underfunded. And if I could get in there, I would work not only to make them more efficient, but to also make sure that they have additional funding on the front end as well.
Farhana?
I'm a Kyrene school district mom. I have 2 little ones going to the public school, so education is very important to me, and also I'm a teacher. So our K-12 school system recently got $13 billion by the Prop 301 for next 20 years. Also Prop 123 provided billions of dollars. Not only that, 2020 legislation that teachers pay, that has been done by the Republican legislator. So the money is there, but we need to focus on wasteful spending and all the loopholes of the bureaucracy, and the money needs to go to the classroom and to the teachers who deserve it the most. Only way we can increase funding for the education, keep our economy going the way we are right now in Arizona, attracting businesses with the low tax and more pro-business regulation. So we need to keep on doing that to have a really skillful labor to have the jobs and fulfill those job opportunities by our own people. Thank you.
And LaDawn?
Sure. So I went to Arizona Public Schools since kindergarten, as did both of my children here in LD18. This is a very personal issue for me. I believe that the only thing holding Arizona back from leading the nation in excellent public school systems is legislators who lack the political courage to do it. So we saw 75,000 teachers show up at the Capitol to insist that we do something about this problem. That means that it needs to be fixed. And not only elementary or high school education, but I also believe that we can have tuition-free community college and debt-free state college for everyone. All it takes is some courageous lawmakers. We have the money. Don't let them lie to you and say that we don't. Thanks.
All right, and finally, Mitzi.
We need to fully restore education funding with accountability to taxpayers and to parents. Just today, I was in a meeting with other legislators and staff working on bills to provide accountability for charter families. I know that our families in charter schools want good choices and they want transparency. With accountability measures in place, then we need to fully restore education funding. Representative Norgaard was the chair of the Education Appropriations Committee, and her committee did not get it done. They came up with a 1% raise. Then 75,000 people marched on the Capitol, and they started to listen, and she followed the governor's lead and came up with the 5.7% per pupil increase. That's still far short. It will not keep Arizona competitive. I'm ready to fully restore education funding because today's students deserve what my kids had 10 years ago.
Okay, Don, do you have anything to add? 30 seconds.
Yes, I would say that, I go to school board meetings, I do textbook reviews, and there's a lot of people that think you dump money on something and it's going to make it better. Well, you can check Washington, D.C., you can check L.A., and you can find out that doesn't work. I go in there and I see exactly what's going on. The textbooks are horrible that they're buying. And they try to get, they're giving condoms out in the nurse's office. You wonder, what is their priorities? And you look at the, just 30 seconds. Okay, thank you.
So we heard a lot about, just now, about loosely some ideas for how to restore funding, or perhaps if there's better ways to find waste and free up funds. So just to follow up to the last question, and I'll warn you, there are a lot of education-related questions. How do you envision specifically, I want to hear some ideas for restoring funds, taxes, waste, fraud, sweeping it from other parts of government? What are your ideas for how to boost funding for K-12 schools if you think it's necessary? Jennifer.
One of the first things we need to do is plug the leaky bucket. We need to say no to Prop 305. Prop 305 is a poorly written bill that is riddled with fraud. It does nothing to stop the fraud that exists in the ESA system right now. Under Prop 305, the very students who the ESA program was created for will lose their priority status. We will be harming students with disabilities, we will be harming the military families, and we will be harming children in foster care. So one of the very first things we need to do is to stop the leaking bucket and stop the leaking money out of our education funding.
All right, Jill?
Again, consolidation of school districts, I think, is the #1 priority to streamline some of the inefficiencies that we have in the districts. And one of the other, when we talk about possible tax increases, I think the medical marijuana needs to be taxed the same as over-the-counter drugs. That's an industry that would equate itself to additional revenue dollars that could be added to the general budget, which could be used for K-12 and university increases.
Greg?
We all think that education should be more efficient. We all think that there needs to be more money in the classroom. I certainly agree with all of that. I think school choice has made schools more efficient than they used to be because they can lose students to that. I think that we have competition in the system. I think we also have to recognize that whenever the legislature has put a tax increase on the ballot, that voters have approved it. And so I think that should be something that we consider. So if voters want to do that, that would be up to voters, and they've done that in the past. And if they want to choose to put more revenue into the system that way, I think that would be good. But it's going to be very difficult to squeeze a lot more money out of the system by continually chasing fraud, waste, and abuse, because we've been chasing that for a long time.
Farhana?
In my opinion, if we do the income tax increase, that's going to reverse our economy. So we need to keep it going the way it is now with a reduced tax and more revenue for the state. That's going to go back to our school funding. And also prioritizing the spending. And the school board needs to be accountable to spend those money with responsibility, because there are many loopholes in this system that the money is there but is not going straight to the students and the teachers. So we need to hold them accountable to that, even though I support local control. Also prioritizing. Some of the time we have seen the education purpose, the other costs become more important at the school level, not the instructional cost of the classroom. So we need to give those money to the right place. That's how we can bring back to the point we want to go with the education.
All right. LaDawn.
Thank you. Something that I think is very important is that we close corporate tax loopholes. There are thousands of corporate tax loopholes that if you read through them, they're the most ridiculous things you've ever seen. They're losing us millions of dollars in revenue that could go towards education. And I commit that if I am elected, that is going to be a focus of mine. Corporate welfare should not come at the expense of our kids' welfare. And I'm not afraid to say that it is high time that the wealthiest people in Arizona who use most of our infrastructure and most of our labor pay higher taxes. That shouldn't be a scary thing to say. I do believe, I agree that if the voters would be willing to raise taxes on the wealthiest, it would be awesome. But also, let's elect some legislators with the courage to say that needs to happen. Thank you.
All right. Mitzi.
We need to keep Arizona competitive and protect our future. And to do that, we need to fully restore education funding. So the question of how is really important. I would agree that we need to close some tax loopholes, but much more specifically, rather than going with broad sound bites, I have a 10-point checklist that I use. I like to make sure that whenever we look at any tax program, we want to ask, is it the benefits or the problems? Which is greater? Because every tax program does have both. And I'm an analyst in my professional training and as a state representative. I will reach out to both sides, bring them together, and try to figure out, is this something that's helping our economy, or is it actually hurting us? And I believe that we need to do the analysis to figure out program by program rather than taking a broad sweep at anything.
Don?
I guess I'm the black sheep here. I'm the only one that's not advocating more money. Let me give you an example. Tempe High School, at the instigation of Brian Schmall, one of the board members, sold a big piece of property and made millions of dollars from it. Then, even before the deal closed, they went out and got a 15% bond issue going and sold it to the people of Tempe, the people of the district. This is the kind of thing, and Brandon Schmall asked at a meeting, if you could ask for more than 15%, would you do it? Everybody in the room laughed. And this is the problem. You want better schools? Often I and maybe one other person are the only people at these board meetings. You want better schools? Go to the board meetings. Get involved. Take a look at what your children are reading in these schools and so forth. You just throw money at it. You think you're solving the problem. You're not solving the problem. There's very serious problems. The math teachers were bragging that they've got all Common Core math books. Common Core math is garbage, and they're bragging about it. Why? Because there's money in it. And as there's money in it, they're going to go for it because they think that's their job.
And Jennifer, 30 seconds.
I agree with Mr. Patterson. We should let the people vote on whether or not they want their taxes raised. And that's it.
Okay. A couple questions about Invest in Ed, or formerly the Red for Ed movement. Generally, there was an allusion to the numbers are different, maybe 60, 70, 75,000 teachers that showed up at the Capitol this spring. Jill, we'll start with you for this question. What was your opinion of the protest, both the fact that there was a teacher strike and overall just the message of that protest?
Well, the mask is off. When you look at the AEU, Noah Carvallis as the leader, he's a self-proclaimed socialist. He just spoke in Chicago at the socialism meeting. So let's put that out there as fact. Now, the AEA joined with the AEU. Whether or not that was a known fact at the time, I'm not quite sure. But the Invest in Ed initiative that we're looking at now is penalizing the top earners who are actually creating jobs. They pay the most taxes now. The high income earners are the ones that create jobs and pay most of the taxes. So the Invest in Ed is punitive to those people. In fact, also the people who aren't paying the bulk of the taxes are in fact going to get taxed, because in 2015 we actually passed legislation that indexed income taxes to consumer price index, and what that did was prepared or protected them from an inflation or a tax increase due to inflation. So what this Invest in Ed initiative actually does is not tax only the wealthy, but in fact taxes every single person.
Okay, Greg?
I can understand that the teachers were frustrated, and Americans have a long-standing right to petition government, and they did so. And I had a lot of friends who were out there who were Republicans who have gone into teaching and were very frustrated and marched at that event, and I can understand that. I also do believe that the leadership of that event has hijacked it. I think it was unfortunate that he did go to that socialist event and talk about some priorities. It showed, I think, what the leadership of that group is really thinking. I think in many ways it's simply part of the Democratic campaign for governor. And I think that the tax increase that ultimately they are trying to get done is exceptionally counterproductive. People who are wealthy oftentimes are the people who are the employers who produce a lot of the jobs, and they're mobile. So, I mean, frankly, if you're really talking about how the Laffer curve works or any other tax theory, if you take somebody who's exceptionally mobile and has a choice of where they live and where they work and where they run their business, then giving a punitive tax that just affects them gives them the opportunity to say, well, my home is really Las Vegas. Frankly, we've been taking advantage of that by getting people to move here from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, California, because we can get really high-profile people here, and now we're simply driving them to Nevada, New Mexico, and Colorado.
Farhana?
There were many ways to bring back what teacher needed. When the movement was happening, everybody came along because the Republican, Democrat, Independent, everyone felt teachers need to be respected. And me being a teacher, and my mother is still a teacher in a preschool, I feel like, just like veterans, as a society, we need to thank the teacher for their service. But what happened through that movement, when it came to the point the students were hostage and the teacher went for a strike, that a lot of parents like me didn't like it. I will tell you a little story. When my 8-year-old, who was taught to respect their teacher next to her parents, she said, "Mom, is my teacher bad?" That day I cried. I couldn't bear the emotion that my daughter is doubting her teacher. Doesn't matter, she's the champion teacher, she wouldn't learn from that teacher. That movement went to that direction due to the wrongful leadership, and I hope you all know by now. Thank you.
LaDawn?
I proudly support the teachers of the Red for Ed movement. Our teachers walked out for our kids. They didn't walk out for themselves. They didn't stop just because they got a small raise. It wasn't so they could get more money. When our teachers have to walk out of their classrooms to get any sort of change, we have a crisis. And we have an education funding crisis in this state. I am friends with several teachers who have ended up going overseas to teach because they cannot afford to live here, and they love it here. They go to ASU, they're from here. They don't want to leave. They want to teach our kids. They love our kids. I absolutely 100% support the Invest in Ed ballot initiative, and I would encourage the rest of you to do so. Thank you.
Mitzi?
You know what, Ben? I'm going to need you to repeat the question. I've heard so many answers.
So specifically, the question was about the Red for Ed movement, about the teacher protests. Did you support the protest? Do you think that it was a good idea? And do you support the message of that protest that the teachers were trying to send, that they want more money for teachers, that they want more money for support staff, that they just generally want more money for education?
More money for education, yes. And yes, the Red for Ed movement was the most effective protest I've ever seen in my life. And let me tell you a little story about these protesters. Their leaders are people like my friend Carol and Maria and John, who are leaders in their school. And they lead a total of maybe 60 people who have decided that, yes, teachers and every single educator deserve a raise. They recognize that we need to invest in education because that is the future for every single one of us. When we retire, we need these kids to take care of our retirement. They're the ones that are going to be looking out for us, and we want to make sure that they have been educated as well as they possibly can be. And that's why those teachers walked out for their children, for your children, for your future. Those brave, brave teachers did this most scary thing in the whole wide world. It was so scary to them, and they did it for their children because they believe that that's the way to take care of our children in the future, for your future. So yes, I agree with them, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart.
Don?
Yes, there's a little difference between a public servant strike and a private industry strike. The public service strike is illegal. The district's covered for them by closing the schools, so you couldn't tell which teachers were participating and which weren't. it's interesting that they went after they keep going after the state legislature. There's not enough money. There's not enough money. The Goldwater Institute did a very good thing on their website showing that the two schools, one of which was in Tempe, had got about the same per student amount, same size districts, and one was getting thousands of dollars more to their teachers than the other one because it's controlled at the district level. And you don't know what the details are. You're just going to keep throwing at a problem like an addiction. When you use the wrong tool, it becomes an addiction. We're addicted at throwing money at the schools. I hear from professors, from nurses groups when I walk in the districts, that every year the students are less prepared. They have to send them to a remedial community college to get the knowledge they should have come out of high school with.
Jennifer.
I was part of the group of moms that started going down to the Capitol 2 years ago to try to prevent the walkout in the first place. We started lobbying and working with our legislators, but leadership would not meet with us. Our schools are at a crisis point. We have schools that are literally falling apart in the West Valley. We have schools that have unsafe drinking water. This is about our children. The teachers walked out because leadership would not listen to the parents that had been down at the legislature for 2 years trying to fix this issue before the teachers walked out.
Jill, 30 seconds.
One of my favorite things about having all the teachers down at the Capitol was I got to meet a whole bunch of teachers at one time. A couple of years ago, I started a Take Your Teacher to the Legislature Day, as some of our districts host the legislators at the schools. And so I started that a couple years ago. And so it's been really fun getting the groups down and learning the legislative process. So I really enjoyed meeting a lot more teachers from a lot of the different districts.
So we've talked a lot about school funding, and we've at least addressed one proposal to increase school funding, the Invest for Ed initiative, which would raise the income tax rate on the top 2 tax brackets in the state. But generally, one of the questions we have here is there's always a debate down at the Capitol about how much of the state's budget goes to schools, and if that's enough, or whether or not there's just enough money to go around. So just generally, broad strokes, Greg, do you support raising taxes in any way, or are you at least open to the idea, or is it something you oppose?
Well, I already got Jennifer's vote from saying it last time. So I think that we have a budget that is pretty tight, that we have worked out a lot of efficiencies, that we've shifted a lot of money to healthcare. And the reason is that when I was in the legislature, there were 80,000 people on access. There's now 1.2 million. And it'll be interesting to see if eventually you get to healthcare questions or other policy questions, but you have to look at the budget globally. And at the point where we used to have 1 million kids in school and 80,000 people on access, then the money went to education. Now we have 1.1 million kids in school and 1.2 million people on access, and the money goes to healthcare. And we have to look at why that is, what the balance is, what the entire big picture needs to be. We do that because it draws down a lot of federal funding. But in many ways, that federal funding is addictive because it shifts the matching funding, the state funding, away from other priorities. And one of those priorities has been education. So there needs to be a comprehensive look at the entire budget, both federal and state, and what has happened from one program to the other.
Farhana?
Question again?
Sure. Generally, do you support raising revenues by increasing taxes, or is it any increase in tax something you'd oppose? Is it something you're open to?
Okay. I do not support tax increase because tax increase will drive away all those businesses and corporate organizations that we are having in Arizona. They are coming from California, but there is a reason for it, because we are low tax environment and more pro-business environment. So I want to see that is happening because more investment means more jobs. That ultimately brings more revenue to our funding. And not only that, I want to address to another issue. like the money sources, the bucket full of money coming to the school district, but again, I will point back how that is spending, because according to the Arizona Office of the Auditor General, the average national classroom instruction and administration spending is 60.7%, where Arizona has 53.8%. So now the money, however it comes, whatever it comes, is need to go to the proper function.
LaDawn?
Sure. Short answer, yes. I absolutely believe in raising taxes to increase revenue for education. I also, touching on all of the companies coming into Arizona because we have such low taxes, they're also bringing their own employees because we don't have enough highly educated people to fill the jobs. So part of investing in our economy is workforce development. And that means that we educate Arizonans to be able to take those high-paying jobs that require a good education, and we invest in them. And that's not by raising sales tax, that's not by raising taxes on the poorest people, that is by requiring the wealthiest Arizonans to pay their fair share. Thank you.
Mitzi?
I've always been curious when I hear folks talk about the percentage of the state budget that goes to education, because that's not a narrative that makes sense to me. To me, what makes sense is, are we educating children for our future? Are we doing a good job of it? Are we adequate at that? And that's what matters to me. A percentage seems to be arbitrary. But your question also was, do you support a different tax structure or even raising taxes? I think the most important thing is that absolutely no increase to the sales tax, because we are already so badly overtaxed in sales tax. We are among the 10 highest states in the country on sales tax rate, and that's not helping us. But I would consider discussions about an overall look at our tax structure to make it more fair and less regressive. It is so horribly regressive. I said that I'm an analyst. I am an analyst. I like to look at the whole picture and decide, is this being fair to everybody or not? And our current system is not, in large part because our sales tax rate is so high.
Don?
Yes, I keep waiting. I cannot get an answer from a Democrat. When will graduated income tax be enough for them? And how much do you do this to these bad old rich people to raise your taxes? It's a great demagogic trick. It's in the Communist Manifesto and the whole thing. But you know, I would prefer a flat tax. And to be realistic, if the people are gullible enough to keep raising spending, thinking that's going to solve their problems, we have to tax, because we have in the Constitution we have to balance the budget. But I will always support a more flat tax, and including getting rid of or certainly getting loopholes out of the income tax and going more to a sales tax, which is a flatter tax.
All right. Jennifer, once again, the question was, broad strokes, do you support or oppose raising tax increases or raising taxes for any sort of revenue increase, or is it something you're at least open to?
I support putting it to the voters and letting the voters decide. The voters should have the last say on any increases that come through the state of Arizona.
All right. Jill?
I think the budget the last couple of years, we've been engaging in a lot of responsible restoration. The percent revenue increase this year is 7.5%, which is ahead of what we expected at 6%. The unemployment is at a 20-year low. Small business confidence is at an all-time high. We have gained 150,000 jobs over the last 3 years. These are all great things. A lot of people are coming to Arizona, people and employers. The number one reason why employers come to Arizona is the ability to make a profit and make money. They bring employees, and that is revenue in the form of sales tax, income tax, and personal tax. Now, an area that we should be working on more, as I have been with our federal counterparts, is acquisition more of our land. Arizona only owns 60% of its land, as opposed to a lot of the states on the eastern side own 100% of their land. So we are already 40% behind as a source of revenue. So that's another initiative. So when we see things relative to getting our land back from the feds, that's something, an initiative that all of us should be able to get behind.
All right, and Greg, final thoughts, 30 seconds.
The legislature is constrained from raising taxes, so if you're going to have something that's not revenue neutral, it has to go to the voters anyway. It is, I think, I agree that it's demagoguery to say let's just tax the rich, because we can set maximum tax rates on the rich, and the rich either don't come here or they go away, et cetera. So it's great to have a lot of economic theory on what we think the best thing is, but it has to be something that works. It has to be something that's accountable. It has to be something that passes from the voters, and it has to be something that solves the problem. And I haven't heard much that does that yet.
So in addition to the Invest in Ed initiative, there's a referendum on the ballot this November that would give you, the voters, an up or down vote on a law that was passed in 2017 that expanded access to what is known as Arizona's school voucher program. It limits access to about 30,000 students, but it does at least open the program up to any Arizona student. Farhana, do you support this referendum?
I would say that ballot measure is still controversy, like I'm taking time to understand, and also it goes to the voters, and voters will say what they want, but still it has pros and cons on both sides. But I do like to see there is an option open so legislator can revisit and rework on those measures that already been done.
LaDawn?
I will be voting no on Prop 305. I hope everybody will be. I don't believe that we're talking about expanding vouchers. I think that public school funds should go to public schools. I believe that we can have excellent public schools that serve the needs of every single student in Arizona, in their neighborhood. Every child in Arizona deserves a fully funded public school with small class sizes and services for disabilities and special needs and counselors, and there's no reason we can't do that. If you would like to make the choice to send your child to a private school, that is certainly your right, but it should not be subsidized by public funds and taxpayer money. Thank you.
Mitzi?
I will vote no on Prop 305, and I encourage others to, because it creates a leaky bucket. I will vote no because I want to protect special needs students. Prop 305 creates a terrible system where special needs students have to compete with everybody else. And I want our ESAs to continue to be available to special needs students. I will vote no on Prop 305 because it's a leaky bucket once again. We don't want to fund more money to our public schools only to find out that it leaks out to a system that has no accountability. We don't know if children are learning or how the money is being spent. Schools get dollars per student no matter what in district and charter schools, so the money always follows the student in Arizona. But with ESA vouchers, the bills remain. The money leaves the school, but the bills are still there. We still need teachers, we still need desks, we still need to leave the lights on. So if 8 children take an ESA voucher out of your neighborhood public school, the bills are still there. The costs remain, even though the funding leaves.
Don?
Well, I might have some problems with some of the details of that proposition, but in general, I'm very supportive of vouchers because what I've seen in the public schools, Tempe Union High School wanted to have a Planned Parenthood program of sex education. What that basically is get the kids sexually active so they'll get down to Planned Parenthood for their abortion. And that's what former abortionists have admitted. If you are a parent and you don't want your kid in this kind of education system, and I sure wouldn't, you have a right to get them out. It's not a burden on the school because there's that many less kids in there, so they don't have to pay to educate kids that aren't in their system. And all this blathering about how it's hurting the public schools, it's not, because they're not getting the full, they're not getting a full tuition to go there. The parents still have to put in. I've known some very poor parents that took their kids out of private school because the stuff that was going on in there. Some of them homeschooled, some private school or something. So, you know, you have to know what's going on.
Jennifer.
Thank you, Ben. It's important to note that there was bipartisan opposition to Senate Bill 1431, which is Prop 305, in both chambers of our state legislature. Prop 305 will take away the vouchers from special needs students, military students, and foster care students. Voting no on 305 keeps the program intact for those students. It keeps their priority for those students. Please vote no on Prop 305.
Jill.
I'm glad to hear you support the existing program. So that's good to know. The ESA program, what that does is it's for failing schools, military, adopted students, where they'll have the opportunity, they are granted funds, and they have the opportunity to go to a different school. The majority of that is special needs students. In our district, 0.5% take advantage of ESAs, so it's a very, very small percent. And again, the majority of that is for special needs students. Now, 1431 had some issues that needed to be tweaked a little bit. We were hoping to get that corrected last year, but we didn't. That being said, with the current program, it was a 5-year implementation, and we are already into year 2. So being a school choice proponent, the cap that Prop 305 would limit it to would be 30,000 students. So thereby, if you have children on the reservation or special needs students that exceeds 30,000, then you have to differentiate between which students get the ESA funding and which don't. So I will have to look at the language, but at this point, I will probably not be supporting 305.
Greg?
I support school choice. I was on the front end, the vanguard of the school choice movement in 91 to 95 when I served in the legislature. Open enrollment was the first thing that we voted for, and the sky was going to fall, public education was going to fall apart. It, of course, didn't. Charter schools were next. We pushed through a charter school bill in 1994, and again, the world was going to fall apart. It hasn't. We've got some fantastic charter schools, and they increase the competition on the traditional public schools, the regular public schools, and I think the quality has increased on both. Because of that, I think they're more efficient with their dollars because of that. ESAs, it's great to hear that folks now support ESAs for the disabled. I certainly support that. The program is not taking money out of the public schools. It's not a leaky bucket. The people who leave end up taking 90% of what they would have at the school otherwise. So the Joint Legislative Budget Committee came out with the cost savings associated with the bill, and they are indeed savings. And so I think that parents have the right to educate their children the way they want to educate their children, and that the state should pay for the education of the children, and ESAs is one small tool to make sure that happens.
Farhana, any final thoughts?
I would say I do support parental choice because politics shouldn't trap any students in a failing school system or the person who is failing in a school system. Because I have seen many students, they're excellent, probably they are not getting the attention they need from the school, and the opposite, the school is excellent, but the kids cannot perform there. So parents are the ultimate owner of the children, and they have the right to choose where their kids going to go. But about the proposition, I do believe the language need to be adjusted. Thank you.
All right. LaDawn, we've had a number of note cards come up with questions about how to legislatively address teen suicide, and specifically within schools. If it's necessary, you think, how is it possible to boost the number of counselors that we have in schools available to students? Your thoughts?
Thank you. This is a really important question. As a Corona del Sol parent, we have especially had a hard few years. There have been a lot of suicides, and it's impacted my kids and our community a lot. And Mitzi actually did a lot of really good work in this last session with suicide prevention and working to get suicide prevention counselors into schools and a program going in our school system. Counselors are invaluable when it comes to our kids at school because they might not be able to talk to their parents. They might not be able, they might not even have anyone to talk to. I know Ms. Kozumar, the guidance counselor at Corona, has been an angel in our family with my daughter who has special needs. I certainly think that in any kind of school funding, we need to make sure that there are not just counselors, but also psychologists and mental health advocates to help our kids. It'll go a long way towards healthier kids and also preventing gun violence if that's coming up next. I don't know. Thank you.
Mitzi.
In 2017, parents came to me and told me about some of the statistics about suicide, especially youth suicide in Arizona. So we formed a task group. We call it the Neighbors Council, and we've been working on this very topic of reducing youth suicide in Arizona. It's not simple to fix this or even make an impact, but we have a solution set, and the key to it all must be that we have somebody whose full-time job in Arizona is to work on reducing suicide. We call this the Suicide Prevention Coordinator, and after a great deal of work, working across the aisle with many others, we now have a full-time youth suicide prevention coordinator in Access. And to make it better, that person will report directly to the chief medical officer. And the chief medical officer is going to reach back to our stakeholder group, the Neighbors Council, and meet with us regularly and with others that you know, because she knows that outreach makes a difference in making good policy. So our group continues. The Neighbors Council will continue to work on solutions that make a difference. And if you have 3 or 4 days, I would love to talk with you about social emotional learning in schools and how we can make a big impact in raising healthy kids.
Don, your thought on trying to get more counselors into Arizona schools?
Well, counselors are wonderful, but I think, again, there's a problem with the public schools. It's endemic and is causing this problem, and that's that they're scrambling these kids' heads with premature the sexuality teachings. They're teaching kids, you got to decide whether you're a male or a female. You got to decide whether you're a transgender or you're a homosexual, you're heterosexual, whatever. Instead of just sticking with the subject matter of what they're supposed to be teaching to make good citizens and people that are competent when they go out in the workforce, these people have this cultural, social issue that they're constantly bombarding these kids with. And they get so confused, and of course there's not one iota. They cannot talk about the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill, even yourself. And so you have a moral-free zone, and what do you expect is going to happen in there when a kid gets a gun or gets something? So my mathematics is the Second Amendment minus the Fifth Commandment equals one disaster after another, whether it's somebody shooting somebody else or somebody shooting themselves.
Jennifer.
On average, Arizona has the worst student-to-counselor ratio in the country. We are number 50. On average, 950 students to every school counselor. How can a school counselor intervene with a suicidal student or a homicidal student if they're in charge of 950 students? We need to bring that ratio down to the national recommended average of 250 students to every counselor.
Jill.
I'm glad Ms. Epstein brought up the suicide coordinator and that she worked across the aisle with many others, because of many others was me. So we worked on that together to get that across the finish line. The other thing that we initiated this year, or restored, was district additional assistance. So in January, I stood with the governor, superintendents, many education advocacy groups, and we had $100 million that we refunded to district additional assistance. It's a 5-year program to get it completely restored, but district additional assistance can also be used for school counselors, and I hope that that is a focus that some of the schools choose to do.
Greg.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why we have local control. We let principals and school boards and superintendents prioritize their money, and I certainly think that they should spend money on counseling and making sure that they have a safe environment there. I think another advantage is the ability to choose a different school. There's a lot of kids who don't feel like they fit in at certain schools, and if they have the ability to go to a charter school, or if they can be homeschooled, or if they can take advantage of an ESA, they can be in an environment that is custom to them and is comfortable with them. I think, frankly, this nation has to look at what's happening with Facebook and Instagram as well and just decide, really, do we want these kids on social media for as many hours a day as they are? I don't think we can do much about that, but I think parents need to recognize what that is. I think our culture needs to recognize what that does, and I think that the schools need to make sure that they are paying attention to what's going on in the social platforms as well.
Farhana?
When the suicide prevention bill came out, I was really happy because this is something we need to address no matter what. Right after high school, I lost my best friend. He committed suicide. It took me 19 years to get over. And also knowing that in our district, so many brilliant kids committed suicide. So I reviewed that bill very carefully. The problem wasn't the issue, and the solution part was the problem. So now I, also being a president of a Lions Club, which is a community-based, hands-on working club, we have Leos, which are teenagers there. We did some kind of workshop, and what I figure out, we have resources available in our community. It's not only government's burden to provide the money and fix the problem. We need to have personal accountability as a community, as a school parents' bodies, and also as a society, and come across with the local resources, nonprofit, and all organizations together to help the school system and resolve this problem.
All right, LaDawn, and you have 30 seconds if you have more to add.
I'd just like to add that our LGBTQ youth are especially at risk for suicide, and they deserve extra support. And I would like to see counseling and Gay Straight Alliance clubs in all of our public schools, because these are our children, and they deserve all the support. Thank you.
So in the event that Governor Doug Ducey gets reelected, one thing that he's mentioned would be a priority of his, and is something that he's tried to set the stage for the last 4 years, is a reduction and, if possible, an elimination of the state's income tax. Mitzi, do you think that's feasible, and do you support that effort?
No. That's really the short answer. No, that's a really bad idea. Arizona has one of the highest sales taxes, which affects those, the less you make, the more you pay of your income in sales tax. Whereas our income tax rates are among the lowest. We are in the 10 lowest rates of all the states in the US. So no, that's not a good idea. On top of that, when the economists get together and look at who's really paying what to help Arizona keep our kids educated and our roads safe and our people safe, who's paying? The people paying who make the least. By and large, people who make the least, are in the lowest quintile, are paying 12–14% of their income to state and local taxes. Meanwhile, those making the most might only be paying 4 to 5% of their income in state and local property and income taxes. That's not right. That's not fair, and I want our tax system to be fair, not so horribly regressive. So, no.
All right, Don, what are your thoughts on a reduction or elimination of the state's income tax?
Yes, again, it is a nightmare for socialists, which every Democrat politician is now. They won't call themselves that because that's a bad name still, but it's what they are. And this is a flat tax. A sales tax is a flat tax with no loopholes. So that's what they claim they want, is no loopholes, but they don't want the flat tax. So we still, I have no problem with a sales tax. Other states have done it, and a lot of people will go there because of that. And it's possible to get as much revenue as you need from that, but just by adjusting it like you do anything else.
Jennifer.
I do not support repealing the income tax. The income tax is about 40% of our state budget. That will blow a huge hole in all of our public services, in our public schools, in our universities, in our fire and police departments. I personally do not mind paying taxes to have a firefighter show up at my house when my house is on fire. I do not support the repeal of the income tax.
Jill.
I think it's going to be hard to reduce or eliminate the state income tax. I like the path that we're on with the incremental reductions of the corporate tax because that brings business to Arizona. Corporations move here. The number one reason they move here is to make money, employ people. Those employees contribute to the state in the form of property tax, sales tax, and income tax, which is a huge source of revenue for the state. So I support the incremental step down of the corporate sales tax that we've been recognizing and realizing in the last few years. That's brought in over 150,000 jobs.
Greg.
I don't even think Doug Ducey supports that anymore. I think it lasted the first couple of weeks when he looked at the budget, and then I haven't heard him advocate that for a while. So the conservatives who grew up in the Reagan era look at the Laffer curve, and conservatives all know what the Laffer curve is, and it says that if you have you can lower rates and you can bring in revenue, and you can bring in additional revenue with lower rates, and that to a certain extent has happened in Arizona. But there's two numbers on the Laffer curve that bring in no revenue, and that's 100% tax rate and 0% tax rate, which is why I would certainly continue to oppose the invest in ed, crank it up as much as you can, and just assume that everybody's not going to avoid it. I think that's a fantasy. I think they are going to avoid it. I think revenue would drop substantially. But if we eliminate it, I can guarantee you that revenue will also drop substantially. And so, no, I would oppose that.
Farhana?
Here's a sudden wisdom. It's called cut rates while broadening the base. That means when you cut the marginal tax rates and also you cover up the deduction and credits for the loss and revenues. So having said so, and also I want to mention, tax the rich, it sounds to me all the times, punish the successful person. So being rich, their hardworking money, they become rich. It doesn't mean that they have to pay more as a punishment. So there should be a balance overall across the board from every economic level and having the tax rates for the revenue. But I do not think eliminating income tax would be possible in one go, but yes, slowly but surely, we need to bring back more jobs investment and more taxpayers, and we need to broaden the base.
LaDawn?
Proportionally, poor people pay much higher amount of their income in taxes in Arizona than the wealthy. It's not asking the wealthy to pay so much more in taxes, it's asking them to pay their fair share. That's all we're saying. That's all I believe in. You know, between the high sales tax that we have and our regressive tax system, the working class here in Arizona pays so much more of their income in taxes, and that's not fair because the wealthy, the successful, the job creators use more of our infrastructure. So they should actually be paying more, but all I'm asking is that they pay a fair amount. Thank you.
Mitzi, you have 30 seconds to wrap things up.
We do want to make sure everybody pays fairly, and I want to make your head explode before I go any further. The Laffer curve is a curve. So on one side, like Greg said, Mr. Patterson said, lower rates means higher revenue. On the other side, it's the reverse. On the other side, if we have lower rates, if we have, thank you. If we increase our tax rates, we will get more revenue on the other side of the curve. And that's the side of the curve Arizona is on. So should we increase rates? Maybe not. But don't assume that there's only one side to the Laffer curve. There's two sides to it. And Arizona is on the other side of what Mr. Patterson described.
All right. There was a bit of a debate this year. It didn't really get too far in the legislature over overhauling the way Arizona manages its water. Obviously, there's concern about the levels dropping at Lake Mead, concern about Arizona's portion of the Colorado River water that we utilize, perhaps being taken first in an emergency situation by other states. Don, how would you legislatively address the water management in Arizona and ensure that we have sustainable water for the foreseeable future?
Well, I'm not an expert on that subject. And I know that the whole history of Arizona has been one of ingenuity and sort of engineers that have been able to populate the valley with sufficient water, and I trust that that will happen again. So I don't panic with sustainability alarms and so forth, but obviously conservation is a good thing always, but other than that, I can't address details of where we would get more water.
Jennifer.
Historically, Arizona has been at the forefront of water conservation. I will work to ensure that water resources are used efficiently. My husband is part of the Arizona Water Association, and I would lean on their expertise and guidance in this issue. We need to also adequately fund the Water Infrastructure Financing Authority so that they can proactively maintain and improve our current existing water systems.
Jill.
Arizona has been a great steward of water. And I think the next couple of years, when you talk about things that are going to be contentious at the Capitol, it's going to be water. The Central Arizona Project manages 60% of the Colorado River and 80% of the 3 counties of water. And there's the division under the governor's office, the state division, which is the water department. And those two are right now at equal positions, which I think is a good thing, that they have each other to balance on, both of them with independent boards. Now, there's a steering committee that's been formed, and I plan to be part of the drought contingency plan that they're developing right now to make sure that when the water below the Lake Mead goes below, and we have to establish a new norm, that everyone's at the table relative to the Colorado River, where we're a junior partner with California and Nevada, and also with Central Arizona Project. So I plan to be at the water table. Got that joke?
Greg?
When I was in the legislature in 91 and 95, we did the 1992 updates to the 1980 Groundwater Act. And so I think it's important to remember that we've been doing water policy in Arizona for a long time, and I've been doing water policy in Arizona for a long time. And there's a couple things that we did as part of that. One is to ensure additional conservation. We did that through a uniform commercial code that was statewide instead of citywide, so that we approved that. And now we use about the same amount of water that we did in the 1950s. We actually did, the water buffaloes like to call it wet water, actual physical water. And what we did was actually divert part of our Central Arizona Project allotment and put it in recharge wells that made sure that it went actually back into the aquifer. That is what we were talking about losing. When I was in the legislature, that used to go to California. So I think it's very important to remember what we've done in the past. I was part of that committee that did that. We are going to have to work with Central Arizona Project. We are going to have to work in a bipartisan effort with other stakeholders, and we're going to have to make sure that the rural and urban areas work together. But Arizona's been very sophisticated with water policy, and I think we'll manage to solve the problem in the future as well.
All right, Farhana?
So last I read, there was a 52% chances of water shortage in Colorado River if the Lake Mead drops below 1,075 feet of elevation, and it will be the worst history that is recorded for the last 100 years for Arizona. At this point, all the stakeholders are aware of it and working very hard. I met a couple of them, and we discussed the issue. And in my belief right now, Arizona, Nevada, and California, all the state jointly needs to work on the contingency plan. And the legislature need to take a bold step to save Arizona from this crisis.
LaDawn?
This seems like one issue that everybody kind of agrees on, which is nice because it is an emergency and we do have a climate crisis, and we will need everyone to work together to help make Arizona livable and sustainable in the future, especially as the climate changes. So I would certainly defer to people who have much more experience than I do with water conservation policy. You know, from talking to environmental groups like the Sierra Club, they talk about limiting groundwater pumping, encouraging xeriscaping. There's a lot of things we can do, but it's going to take climate scientists, it's going to take environmental activists, it's going to take people with experience in environmental legislation, and we're all going to have to work together because we all do have to live together. So, thank you.
Mitzi.
It is about working together. Arizona has a proud tradition of bringing many, many people to the table to discuss and negotiate how should we handle our water. Who gets it? Does agribusiness get it? Do people in their homes get it? These are important decisions, and having more people at the table makes a difference. In 2017, we had not so much of that, but we have new talks starting now. There is a new Arizona steering committee that is working on the drought contingency plan, and now we are including more people. It will be more inclusive of including elected officials, even legislators. Imagine that, since they'll have to vote on the bill. To have legislators and all elected officials, including your elected representatives to the CAP board, the water board, have them at the table, will have much better results, because we've got to protect Lake Mead. We can't fall below 1075, although we probably will. And if we do, we need a solid plan that has been created with all the stakeholders at the table. So I'll be looking forward to the results of this new steering committee, because it's far more inclusive, and it'll be open to the public. I hope you'll be watching too.
All right, and Don, any final thoughts? 30 seconds.
No.
All right. Jill, you mentioned earlier tonight support for maybe taxing medical marijuana differently. We see bills every year, admittedly they don't go anywhere, that would legalize or perhaps decriminalize recreational marijuana. And we're expecting in 2020 there will be another opportunity for voters to vote for legalizing marijuana on the general election ballot. Starting with Jennifer, what is your opinion on legalizing or decriminalizing marijuana?
I think that there are far too many people in our prisons who are there for minor drug offenses. It's costing the taxpayers a whole lot of money. We do need to look at possibly decriminalization, but I think it does need to go to the voters, and it needs to be a vote of the majority of the population.
Jill.
I think we need to look at Colorado and watch what they are doing and not use Arizona as a guinea pig. The THC levels in marijuana right now are 30 times higher than they were in the 70s, and there's a huge variation from dose to dose. I have a grave concern that it's a gateway drug and will lead into other drug addictions. So right now I am not a fan of legalizing medical or recreational marijuana. Medical marijuana is now legal in the state of Arizona. Again, I think it's something that should be taxed like over-the-counter medicines.
Greg.
I don't think marijuana is medicine, and I certainly don't support allowing its recreational use. I think that the quality control is dangerous. I think that you're going to get a lot of, again, different dosages. You're going to get different effective levels. It is a gateway drug. I have a friend who gets out of rehab occasionally, and he says there's nothing wrong with marijuana except that it makes me forget that I'm not supposed to take heroin. And that's an issue, is that can be a slippery slope for people who are really struggling, and then they end up really tanking, and they start with something else. They don't start with heroin, they start with something else. And making marijuana more available, I think, is not the solution. We also have to recognize that it is a Schedule I drug federally, and eventually one of the presidential administrations is going to come up, whether it's Jeff Sessions or somebody else, and say, wait a second, Congress has passed a law and the states don't get to exempt themselves from those laws. That's the Raich case in the Supreme Court. And so I think what we're going to see is a conflict between the federal government and the state government, and I think in this case that the federal government should win, and we should have uniform laws that recognize that this is a Schedule I drug and that it's dangerous.
Farhana.
2016, voters already voiced out what they want, and also I will bring back the Colorado example. Right now in Colorado, more than 80+ legislation happened with the consequences of the recreational marijuana. Among them, the THC level, not only that, the edible packaging that look alike for food products, that's supplies 45% of the marijuana that is consumed by the people. Do we really need to mimic Colorado and make Arizona one of those? I don't think so.
The Dawn.
Sure. I do support decriminalizing marijuana. I believe that our drug laws disproportionately affect our communities of color, and that we have a higher rate of people of color incarcerated for minor drug offenses. I support decriminalizing and releasing folks who've been convicted of minor drug offenses from prison. That leads into getting rid of our terrible for-profit prison system here in Arizona that preys on people of color in our community. If the voters decide to legalize marijuana, which is certainly their right, and we've done in other states, I think that we need to be very careful about where the tax revenue goes and make sure that it goes to our priorities like our public education system and things that we desperately need revenue for. Thanks.
All right, Mitzi.
We need research on marijuana because I don't think the platitudes, it's more safe than a lollipop, or it's the most dangerous thing in the whole wide world, that's not going to help us. We need the research, and right now the federal legislation is holding us back from even allowing scientists to look at current strains of the plant. The strains of the plant that they're doing research on are so limited that it's kind of ridiculous. We don't even know what we're finding out. But more than that, we're just not finding out. I've looked and looked to try to come up with a sensible scientific answer to these public policy questions, and we just desperately need the research. So please contact your members of Congress and get them to allow research on this plant so that we can make intelligent decisions. I do believe that marijuana can be used as a medicine and that we do need better quality control. We had a bipartisan bill in the legislature, very evenly passed, wide open stakeholder group, and we made some headway on quality control, because if you're the mom of a kid with leukemia and this medicinal marijuana is what helps, you want some help with that.
Don?
Yes, we heard some great ideas here, and I have to agree that it's a little strange to be legalizing a drug which is not legal from the federal standpoint. But I want to go deeper as usual, and I'd like to ask a little question of what is wrong with our society that everybody's getting into this escape business. Other countries, they legalize marijuana, and then next thing you know, they want to legalize heroin and everything else. Well, we got all these great things that we stand for, that all these people think are so great. We got, woman's choice. We got this, that, and the other thing, and people don't seem to be happy. They seem to have to escape more and more with these things. We got an opioid epidemic and so forth. So maybe we need to take a look at our society and see, is there something wrong with our conscience? Is there something wrong with the things we're doing that we claim and we think are making us happy, but maybe they're not making us so happy?
All right, and Jennifer, any final thoughts?
I really think that we need to look at decriminalization because we are spending an exorbitant amount of money on our prison system for minor drug offenses. Thank you.
All right. We've still got time for a couple of individual questions now. We have a few for our candidates. Jill Norgard, the first is for you. You mentioned at a couple of points that you think that there is an opportunity to consolidate the number of school districts, public school districts in Arizona, perhaps to free up some more funding for K-12 public schools. There was an effort in the past that failed to do that. I wonder if you could address what the failure of that effort was, why this time might be different, And if you have an idea of how much more dollars could be freed up for education if the school districts were consolidated.
$763 million are spent on administration last year. 53% of that was administration for the districts, and 47% of that was administration in the actual schools. So as far as consolidation, the putting together or consolidating the districts and freeing up schools, yes, I think it's a good idea to do. When we look at you don't need to consolidate an adjacent district, and when we did that in 2008, people didn't want to consolidate. It was a government, heavy hand of the government coming in and saying you need to consolidate, as opposed to the grassroots efforts. I think once the parents and the grassroots efforts get involved in, hey, we need to take a look at this and talk to your school board and ask your school board, are you willing to do economic analysis to see if a consolidation would save us money overall? And see what the answer is, if your school board wants to bring that on or if they don't want to take that on. But definitely I think it's something worth looking into, and it has yielded savings in many other states.
And Jill, I apologize, I forgot to mention, we're giving candidates 2 minutes to answer these, so maybe if you could address the first part of that. Why did the effort fail in the past, and what could be different this time? Well,
in 2008, when it failed, we didn't have as much open enrollment as we do now. And in Maricopa County, we have 50% of students do not go to school in their own zip code. And in our district here in Kyrene, we have about 30% of students that don't go to school within their own zip code. So I think now that we have a lot more mix of kids and students and diversity, I think that the effort needs to be readdressed. All
right. Next question is for LaDawn. You've mentioned a couple of times your support of the Invest for Ed movement, which the initiative that they've put to the ballot would raise taxes for the wealthiest Arizona families. Can you elaborate on why that is a fair tax structure? It's often referred as a millionaire's tax in other states, and it's traditionally something that's passed in far more Democratic-leaning states than Arizona. So tell this red-leaning state, why is that to you a fair tax structure?
Okay, well, JFK said, to those to whom much is given, much is required. And I think that that is true. I was raised in a family that was taught, I was taught as a kid to treat my neighbors like brothers and sisters, and that we took care of each other. We took care of each other when we were sick. We took care of each other when we were poor. We couldn't pay the rent. And everybody in the community helped each other out. And those who had more to give helped a little more. Of course, it would be great if all of the wealthy people in Arizona just voluntarily gave enough money to fully fund our education system. Sometimes that doesn't happen. And sometimes it is the role of the people to stand up and say, we live in a society, we work hard, we deserve a basic level of education for our children, we deserve a basic level of living. And if you're going to have so much, and you're, clearly enjoying living here in Arizona, sorry, I got really excited there about taxes. If you're going to enjoy the benefits of living in Arizona, having Arizonans work for your companies, having Arizona workers help your company thrive, then you are going to invest back in this community. And we, the working class, are going to demand it. Does that answer the question?
All right. And I should also remind the other candidates, if a question is asked that you'd like to weigh in on as well, just please give me a little heads up, and I'd be happy to let you speak. Our next question, though, is for Mitzi. You've made clear your support of increasing revenues to better fund public education. In the last 2 years, did you sponsor any legislation to accomplish that? And if you did, as a Democrat, realistically, how can you get that through the legislature?
Well, Ben, I believe it was your newspaper that had a headline in my very first year in the legislature that said, Democrats pass amendment, and that was mine. So that's how we can get it done. It takes work across the aisle to get something done, and yes, I have sponsored legislation that would help fund our schools better. In 2017, I sponsored the legislation for a 4% raise for teachers when the other side was offering a 1% raise for teachers. And we funded it through a series of things like moving money from the lottery. There was a number of other places that we moved it from, and we were able to just set better priorities to say education matters. And that was in 2017. In 2018, our caucus worked hard on a lot of different ideas to create more revenue in the state, and we hit a brick wall when we tried to talk to the other side. We had many discussions with many different folks, frequently on the floor of the House, sometimes in offices, and I was disappointed to find that every option we talked about for raising revenue was met with, oh, but there's too many lobbyists for that. Oh, there's too many lobbyists for that. Oh, there's too many lobbyists for that. Nope, there's too many lobbyists for that. Nope, too many lobbyists for that. But you know what? The poor don't have a lobbyist. And that's why they kept saying, well, we'll consider a sales tax, a raise to the sales tax rate, because the poor don't have a lobbyist. Well, they have me. And you have me. You, the middle class, who keeps getting asked to pay and pay and pay and pay through the nose, you have me. And I am there looking at our tax structure to make sure that it really is fair, not just by the rates, but by who is actually paying, which means you need to have intensive economic analyses done. And that's the kind of work that I'm going to bring to this. That's why I'm on the Ways and Means Committee, which is the Revenue Committee, if you will, because we need to bring my business skills to the legislature to get into the weeds and make sure life is fair for everybody.
All right. Yes, Farhana.
With all due respect, last 2 years of session, every bill that is supporting the teachers' pay, we saw the Democratic incumbent, with very respectfully, I would say that, you didn't support the teachers' pay. I do understand your philosophical boundary that you couldn't cross to support that, but there need to be a start. If the Republican legislator didn't pass 2020 bill, today teachers would still stay at the zero limit of their pay increase. So somebody started the journey and it needs to build up slowly but surely. The people, the middle class, the poor you have mentioned, they have been in the street for so long, and somebody is promising, we are fighting for you, without bringing the result. So pay attention to those who is working hard at the legislature and bringing the result for the people, not just promising there's a bright future, but working to bring that future into reality.
Mitzi, real quick, I'm going to offer you 30 seconds for a rebuttal. I think that was a reference to the budget vote this year when there was a budget to raise money for teacher salaries, and Democrats in the House uniformly opposed it.
I didn't vote for the governor's budget because it's a castle built on sand. It wasn't partisan. I voted yes for hundreds of Republican bills, and I voted no for them because I'm tough on bills. I'm very tough on bills, and there were many things wrong with that bill. Number one, castle on sand. Left and right are saying it's not sustainable. If the economy so much as hiccups, it doesn't work. Number two, there's an amendment in there that says school districts, when you do your procurement, you have to choose the cheapest. Not what's best for students, but just the cheapest. Number three, most importantly, it's not enough for schools. We need to fully restore education funding and make sure all our educators get competitive wages so that Arizona, we can keep it competitive here.
All right. This next question is for Farhana. There has been a bit of a movement recently at the Arizona legislature, particularly among some Republican lawmakers, to pass resolutions calling for Article 5 conventions to amend the Constitution. There was a resolution for a balanced budget amendment that passed, I think, in 2017. There's also somewhat of a push for Article 5 convention for term limits on Congress. What is your position on that issue?
I believe I'm the champion on term limit because that's how the term limit they mentioned, because I do support term limit. It is very logical to me when our president, the highest position in the country, do have the term limit, why don't the Congress shouldn't have it? And do we have the responsibility as a state legislator to speak out and do something? We do. And now the question is how much people do understand and do support that. That's the question there too. But if you ask my personal opinion, when government became bigger than the citizen, that point government became corrupted. So if we have the term limit, then citizen will still have the control not to create that monster government in the process. And also the time change, and the new generation has new demand, and that should be represented by the current people, not someone in the legislature for extra amount of time and forever.
All right. Our next question is another one for Jill Norgard. A follow-up on the school district consolidation plan. Arizona is very big on local control. Consolidating school districts obviously would mean there would be fewer districts, fewer perhaps really localized districts. Some argue that that's a good thing, that those local boards, those local districts know what's best. What are your thoughts on balancing the pros of local control versus this effort to consolidate?
When you look at the top highest paid salaries in the state, two of the top three are Mesa and Chandler. So there is a huge economies of scales that comes with consolidating schools. Now, when we look at our districts are relatively big. We have schools in 20s and 30s. I think Tempe Union has 7 school districts. Perhaps that's an opportunity for Tempe Union. But a lot of the rural districts have superintendents with 1 school. Again, 40% of the superintendents in our state manage 2 or fewer schools. That's definitely an opportunity to consolidate school districts. And again, if we can get some grassroots and get the grassroots and the parents involved in inquiring with the school boards and do an analysis on what makes fiscal sense for the state. I think it's a priority that we need to address, and I'm going to keep getting the word out in hopes that people take a look at it, and then we can look at the fiscal piece of it.
All right. Yes, Mitzi, 30 seconds.
I've been around the block a few million times on school advocacy, and so I'm always interested in considering consolidating districts because that's what people want to know about. But I'll say this. I hope that if you're sincere about that, you're willing to put your money where your mouth is, because one thing we really found is in the local districts is that if you do want to consolidate, and if it might work, it costs money to figure that out. It costs money to figure out, will it work from a very detailed view, to make that detailed plan, and then to implement that very detailed plan if you're going to consolidate districts. So if you're going to do this, we're going to need some money for the districts to help them make that transition to a consolidation.
Well, and
Jill, any follow-up, 30 seconds?
You would have one-time costs that would be balanced again and outweighed by year-long and continuous savings.
And so the schools will need help with that one-time cost. So that's what we'll talk about.
Okay.
All right. We have one more individual question. This is, again, for LaDawn. You've spoken a lot about your support of public schools. We'd like to know, what are your thoughts on charter schools? Do you perhaps outright oppose them, or is there a place for charters in Arizona?
I believe there's a place for charters in Arizona in the school districts. As long as students aren't taking their public school funds to these charters and depleting other schools. If we want to create a school district that includes charter schools that maybe are for the arts or for the sciences, and it's part of the school district and part of our public school programming, I think that's fine. I think that when we're basically masking a private school by calling it a charter and not offering public transportation, making it so that my daughter can't go there because I work all day and there's no school buses. So that sounds like a private school to me. That does not offer the same services as a public school would. So sure, charter schools, that's great. It has to provide the same level of support for students with special needs, for disabled students, kids with learning disabilities, and also public transportation. Or really, it's just a private school that's using public school dollars. That's how I feel about it. Thanks.
All right. Well, we've gone a little bit over our hour and a half here tonight, so we're going to wrap things up with 1 minute each for closing remarks. We started with Mitzi for opening, so we'll just flip it, and LaDawn, we'll start with you. 1 minute for closing remarks.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody who's come out. It is amazing to see so many people so actively engaged in democracy. This year is an enormously important year for our democracy, and it is important for everyone in this room, no matter what political party or persuasion, to get involved. And the difference is going to be all of us working together to make Arizona better. I will continue fighting for working families. You know, I want to be the voice of regular people at the Capitol, and that's what I'm going to do if I'm elected. So I would appreciate your vote. If you like what you heard, go to ladonsteuben.com, sign up to volunteer. I am the clean elections candidate here today, so I don't need your money, but I certainly, you know, we don't have the money, but we have the people. So I could use all of your help. Thank you very much.
Farhana.
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight, and thank you, Ben. I'm a conservative and constitutional candidate who will champion the constitutional rights for the people, because my slogan is my goal, restoring the American dream. I have gone through a lot to come to this point, to survive in America. That's why I know what is a great treasure I got, and I want to make sure everyone have it in their life. And also, I will take care of the taxpayer money, families, and also job growth, school, education, and our safe neighborhood. So I wish that you will get to know me more. Go to my website, shifaaz.com, shifaaz.com. Also, my phone line is always open. I'm open to hear from you, and I wish to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg?
Issues are exceptionally complex. I think you've had a flavor of that tonight, whether we're talking about healthcare, K-12 education, higher education, water issues, energy issues. They're all exceptionally complex, and people have to work together to solve them, and they need experience to solve them, and I've done both. And so I would appreciate your support in both the primary, and if I make it through the primary, in the general, so that I can work together with the people who are already there and make sure that we can solve very complex issues and do so in as much of a bipartisan manner as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill?
I wanted to highlight a few endorsements. Tempe, Chandler, Phoenix, and Mesa Chamber of Commerces have all endorsed me, which validates my pro-business work. I get out in the community a lot working with the small businesses and the large businesses. I've also been endorsed by the Medical Association, the Dental Association, the Realtors, Free Enterprise Club. And I hope you got to learn a little bit more about me tonight. And if you have any other questions that I didn't answer, or if you have follow-up questions, email me at jnorgard.com is my website. Go online. I'd be happy to meet with you individually or follow up on any of your questions. And again, thanks for coming. It's great to see such a good turnout. We don't usually get this many people down at the Capitol, so it's fun to see everybody here.
Thank you. Jennifer?
One thing that I didn't get to talk about tonight, I have been a leader in the Yes Phoenix startup community over the last 4 years and have been involved in every single Phoenix Startup Week since its inception. I know how to bring stakeholders to the table. I know how to collaborate with business, industry, nonprofits, governments to create solutions for our small businesses, and that is what I will bring with me to the Capitol. My website is Germaine for House. Please sign up to volunteer. We will take your donations. And I appreciate your support. Jennifer Germain for Legislative District 18, House of Representatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Don?
Yes, we managed to get through another debate without addressing the issue which I left the Democrat Party over, which is when I saw a picture of an aborted baby. It's a joke, isn't it? It's funny. So anyway, a baby he has to get through the gauntlet of abortion today, and if he survives that, he's facing a $20 trillion debt. We're selfish people. We should be looking at what we can give our children, and here we are borrowing from them and killing them to get their resources for ourselves. That's shameful. And I have to address my fellow Catholics, who are many of are Democrats, and they're voting for Democrats. These people are destroying civilization by destroying the family with the homosexual agenda, the abortion agenda, and so I don't see where the disconnect is between your knowledge of what your church teaches and your knowledge of what the Democratic Party is doing, but it's a sad thing to watch because you keep it going.
All right. Thank you. And Mitzi?
Experience does matter, and I've been advocating for strong public schools for over 25 years. I also have many years of experience as a computer systems analyst in manufacturing and finance industry, and with my experience and those business skills, I've developed quite a network of people with expertise in science and technology. So one thing I wanted to talk with you about is the importance of vetting bills that come to the State House. I think that you want a representative who sees more than the shiny glitz of, oh, technology, cool. No, I'm tough on bills. I'm no pushover. And I bring science cafes to the legislature where we bring scientists from industry together with legislators to talk about the issues, to make sure we're being careful about things. Oh yeah, and there's coffee and bagels too. I've said many times we need to fully restore education funding, because today's students deserve what my kids had 10 years ago. And once again, I'm proud to be endorsed by teachers and police.
All right, and that concludes our debate. I've just got a couple of things to say when we wrap things up. To our candidates, thanks so much for participating. To the audience, we hope you'll, thank you, yeah. Candidates, I know it's getting late, but we hope you'll stick around, and audience members, you'll have an opportunity to talk directly to them now if you'd like. And thank you again for all of you for coming and for trying to inform yourselves before voting. We encourage you, please visit www.azcleanelections.gov/voter dashboard for a customized experience. You can find information there on the primary election, the candidates, the issues, and to view this debate on demand. Please fill out a debate evaluation form. You can return that to volunteers. You can also fill that out online. And thanks again for coming. And again, please stay and speak with the candidates.